This conference will now be recorded.
You set, Neil?
Yeah, I'm all set. I'm just gonna be on my phone. I'm having an issue on my computer at the office.
Oh, that's okay. Great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'll
Yeah,
call the
sorry.
meeting to order. I'll call the meeting to order at 5:03 and welcome everyone. This is the first meeting, a regular meeting of the month for May of 2021, and today's date is May 4th, and the time is 5:03. And Mr. Simcoe, would you do the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Mahoney,
Here.
Mr. Genowine,
Here.
Crandall,
Here. Next
Simcoe.
item on the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, Dave.
Yeah, don't cut
Next
me off.
item on the next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please follow along with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. I'll move approval of the April 20th minutes.
Second.
Calling the roll, Mr. Genowine,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall.
Yes. Thank you, Dave. Next item on the agenda is any additions or deletions to the agenda. We'll start, Mr. Mahoney. Anything?
Not this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Genuine.
No.
Mr. Simcoe.
No.
Okay. And finally, Mr. Turner. And would you briefly outline the way we do a virtual meeting?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Administration has no proposed additions or deletions to this evening's agenda. And as always, we appreciate everybody taking the time to participate. We do respectfully request that individuals place their phones or computers on mute, which helps to improve the quality of the audio. And upon warning from the chair, if any individual is engaging in disruptive activity via virtual meeting, they may need to be removed. But again, thank you for your participation this evening.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the zoning department, but we'll reconvene that or do that at 5:30. So we'll skip down to the road and service department, number 8 on the agenda. And the first item is to appoint members of the Public Works District 12 Integrating Committee. And then the next item is authorization to award a bid for the 21 Sylvania Township Resurfacing Project. The next item is 8.3, Sylvania-Metamora Connection Presentation. And finally, authorized to install community gateway monuments. And Mr. Nash will give us a background on those item by item. Go ahead, Mr. Nash.
Good evening. Resolution 21-067. This is to appoint the Public Works District 12 Integrating Committee. It is a requirement by the committee bylaws for the township members to approve and appoint these representatives. So we're just asking to that you agree to these representatives as part of the district committee. This committee reviews and approves the projects in the Ohio Public Works Commission for our district. Any questions?
Okay. If there's no questions, I'll move resolution 21067.
Second.
Mr. Genowine,
Who are we appointing?
For Representative A would be Brian Craig from Monclova Township. His alternate is Steve Kendall from Providence Township. And Representative B would be Mike Hampton from Springfield Township. And his alternate would be Dave Bench from Jerusalem Township. So they're all township members that would represent us as a township on the committee.
Okay. Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall,
Yes. Next item on the agenda is authorization to award a bid on the 21 Township Resurfacing project. Mr. Nash?
This project is the Deer Point, Farmington, and other subdivision roads within the township. Gherkin was the lowest and best bidder at $728,511.59. I'm requesting to enter into a contract and authorize the bid for them.
If there's no questions, I'll move resolution 21068 to award the bid to Gherkin for the 21 Sylvania Township resurfacing project.
Second.
John, was that you, John Genowine?
Yes.
Okay. I'll call the roll. Mr. Genowine,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall.
Yes. Next item is the Sylvania-Metamora connection. That says a bikeway connection. Mr. Nash?
Mr. Turner, are you able to pull that map up?
I can. I'll pull it up now.
It's a little difficult to see, but we've been working on this as far back as the land use plan. We're trying to make a connection between the north side of Sylvania-Metamora and all points of interest to the east and to the west. If you look at the map, the circles, the areas that are circled in red are original homestead properties that have no sidewalks or connection to the other subdivisions or the intersections of Sylvania-Metamora and Allen or Ridgefield or Mitchell Road. So we've had a connection issue and a connectivity issue for all the residents in those subdivisions. I've been working on this with Ron Myers in the county engineer's office, and we've come to a conclusion that it's be very difficult to obtain the right-of-way needed to fill those gaps in with either a path or a sidewalk, but those options still are available. And if you look at the printed information in the packet, you'll see that those different options. My recommendation to the board to be able to get the north side, which is approximately 300 plus homes, to access the south side multi-use path, which connects all points to the west, to the east. It connects to Paysetter Park and all other points into the city. It'd be very similar to the crossover mid-block path at Paysetter Park. In the circle in the middle, the green circle, in that vicinity is where we would put a mid-block beacon. It'd basically be very similar to the one on Corey that's installed near the park, and the one that's installed at Paysetter Park, which would be a mid-block. This is a less desirable way to get across to the multi-use path, but it is safer than no signaling at all. So the county has no project planned in the near future in this area. Therefore, no funds can be expelled, but they have offered to help with this process and get this installed. I did an assessment and a cost analysis on the cost it would get to be able to install this would be roughly $12,872. That's just an estimate. What they're proposing is that we pay for the materials and labor for the installation of the rapid flashing beacons and the signage that would be involved, and the small amount of sidewalk or path that would be needed to connect those two areas there. And that then they would accept that into their maintenance system and forever maintain it. I think it is a reasonable cost to be able to get those 300 homes connected to the path. It is part of our land use plan recommendation. Specifically, this area has sidewalks that lead to nowhere, so this does help with that connectivity and that issue. It does relieve us of the maintenance of it, but we do have a cost up front. I have not checked with John Burrell on the legal aspects of expending money on county right-of-way, but that would be the next step to ensure that this is feasible. From what I understand, I don't believe that the county would have proposed this offer to us if they hadn't done it before, or it was not financially feasible for us to do that. So what I'm just proposing now, I don't need to have any up or down vote or anything like that. Just wanted to bring the information to your attention. And if you have questions on it, or if you do not want me to pursue this type of activity, then I'll just look at the other recommendations or options I provided to you, and we can pursue those instead.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Any questions, Mr. Genuine?
No, sounds good.
Okay, Mr. Mahoney,
I do not. Thank you.
Mr. Simcoe?
Yes, I do. I'm kind of wondering, as part of any planning or written reports that you would provide, I'm wondering, are there any plans with the township, county, and/or state regarding the lost area of the township that's off Flanders and Lasky and Alexis that has no sidewalks generally, and no bike paths, no walking paths or anything? And so while this doesn't pertain necessarily to this motion, I am wondering what the township plan is, or any governmental entity plan is, for that part of the township that seems to be lost. All of these things are always happening out west, and nothing is happening in the eastern part of the township, or at least not that I'm aware of. So that's a question I have.
I'm not aware, Mr. Simcoe, of any plans for a path or a sidewalk in the Lasky Flanders area. I am aware of the Sylvania area bikeways are looking at putting that as a bike path as a part of their mapping system. I can provide an update on that map and the potential paths that they are looking at. The University of Toledo has done a study for them as well for TMCOG and the bikeways, looking at different routes and connecting the city of Toledo with the township and the universities as well. So if the board pleases, I can provide an update on that committee's progress and where they're at on those issues.
Well, I sure would like to see something on it, because I understand it's easier to do in some of these areas where there is more space and it's easier, you're building and developing out there. You can put in, these things much more easily. I understand that off of the Flanders area, let's just say, and going out of Alexis and or Lasky and over off into the Corey Road area, it's more expensive because you have existing homes. But I just think that the county and or township should look at what they might be able to do. For example, along Flanders, we could take over like a 4-foot, there's plenty of room on these properties. We could take over, make like a bike path or something and do something to connect it up to like, let's say the bike trail that starts at Burger King up there, near on Monroe Street. And it would, I think, be, beneficial, but I realize that there's a greater expense there to do that because you have all these existing businesses and that, and but I'm just hoping that we could take a look at that. So if you could provide me with anything about that, I sure would appreciate it, because I just think the residents over here would like to be able to at least maybe connect us up to the area there where the Burger King is there on Monroe Street, and that would be a great thing, because then it accesses so many of the walkways and bikeways and that. So anything you could do on that, Rob, I would appreciate it. I know people around this area, this eastern section would be very appreciative of that.
Absolutely. I can put an update together and present it in the next agenda and disseminate it out for everyone's review. There are some preliminary plans on trying to connect areas specifically in Quarry, north of the and Whiteford areas around the area of the ProMedica facility as well, to connect some of those areas up. So again, these are preliminary plans. The mapping is available on TMACOG's website as well, but I can put something together to show the board what's going on, at least future planning and some near future as well, and current signage that they're looking at putting up.
Well, good. Well, thanks, Rob. That's all I have.
Okay, you're welcome.
I appreciate you giving me a little time to inquire about this.
No problem, Dave. And I think the other thing, I'm sure Mr. Nash is aware of, this involves, to make that connection down to Sylvania Avenue, probably the township has the easiest part, but you're involving the city of Toledo and Lucas County to do that connection. So you got 3 agencies. I'm not sure if anyone's taken the lead on that, but I would suggest it be the county. But I'm sure Rob will get back to us on that plan. All right.
Thank you, John.
The next item on the agenda is the community gateway.
Well,
Gateway monument.
John, did we? Oh, I'm sorry. Did we pass?
No, we don't have anything there, Dave. That was just an update.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I think.
You're right. No, you're right.
Okay. Next item is the gateway monuments. Rob?
This is resolution 21-069. This is authorization to install community gateway monuments. As you're aware, we've been meeting with the city of Sylvania and the Chamber of Commerce and Ohio Department of Transportation, researching this potential gateway monuments on the I-475-23 Central Avenue interchange there on the ramp areas. One of the requirements for ODOT is the Board of Trustees or the members of the City Council either pass an ordinance or by resolution approving the installation of such a monument. They just want to ensure that the elected officials are on board, and this is not something that is being generated outside of that arena. That way, if it does move forward, they know that the elected officials in the area are aware of it and support the efforts. So I'm asking you to approve the authorization to install community gateway monuments in that vicinity.
All right, and if there's no questions for Mr. Nash, I'll move resolution 21-069, authorization to install community gateway monuments.
Second.
The only question I had is this like when you drive down 475 and you see "Welcome to Springfield Township" and stuff like that, is that what this is, Rob? Putting up something there over 475 23 at Central Avenue?
Dave, we're looking at more of a hardscape, a wall type of situation along the exit ramp area. We do have some samples and some renderings that we can provide to show you what we're looking at. We're in the very preliminary stages of looking at those, but we're looking at more of a wall situation versus a lettering, something landscaped, a little higher end than just a lettering on the fencing.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me.
One of the reasonings is the obstruction of all the signage, the big billboards, because of the split as you're heading north. You wouldn't see most of the lettering on that fencing.
Thanks, Rob. I'll call the vote on resolution 20-069. And Mr. Jellwine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes. And Rob, thanks a lot. There's two things that you've talked about: the bike trails, the connectivity, and the signing that are in the land use plan. I very much appreciate you moving ahead on these items. Next item on the agenda is something I missed, and I apologize. I did not ask for public comments on the agenda items. I'm sorry about that, but the public has two opportunities to speak on tonight's agenda. And one is for any item on the agenda, and then later we'll have a chance for any items that are not on the agenda. So I'll give you a few minutes here. If you want to speak to anything on the agenda, please give us your name and address. All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. May I speak?
Sure, absolutely.
Yes, my name is Keith Webb, and I live at 6906 Shooters Hill here in the township, and represent We Are Traffic, a local advocacy group promoting bicycle transportation.
Hang on, Mr. Webb, just
Yes.
a moment. That's not on the agenda. There'll be another opportunity. Our goal is to try to get through the agenda items so we can address
yes, sir.
so then we can address the zoning, and then there will be an opportunity for you to speak, though.
Yeah,
it's just
actually,
not quite yet.
Certainly, I actually only wanted to speak in favor of the crossing that was discussed earlier on agenda, that We Are Traffic is in favor of moving forward with that crossing. That's the comment I wanted to make. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's fine. Excuse me. That's perfectly fine. That was on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want me to call on you again later?
No, that's the main. I believe the zoning items, were covered at a previous meeting. So I again thank you for passing the bicycle parking as part of the new zoning resolution. Thank you. Thank
you very much. We'll move on to the fire department. That's item number 9.
Stand by. Are you still looking for public comment? Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Bud Crosby, 4500 block of Westbourne. Just as listening to the most recent resolution that you passed, the 069, I was just curious as to, is this the one and only opportunity to discuss what the design will be, or will this, once the design is finalized, come back for approval of the design? Was this initial resolution?
I'm pretty sure, but I'll lean on Mr. Nash. I think this is just authorizing. The state wants to know that this was authorized by the elected officials. I don't think anything's final yet. Is that right, Mr. Nash?
That is correct. Nothing is final. It's in the very preliminary stages. We don't even have real renderings from a professional architect or anything to show you as of yet. We have just some ideas of what the Chamber of Commerce members, myself and ODOT and Mr. Turner have just kind of looked at from other communities. Once we do have something and we narrow it down to, you know, a reasonable amount, I think there'll be further discussion and a selection process.
That answers my question. So this issue will be rebroadcast, and just for the monies that are going to be involved, will this be public monies involved or private money raised for the cost of the install, whatever the final design may be?
The primary cost will be the burden of donations. We're looking at, the chamber is going to kind of lead that for us and soliciting donations for the costs. I think there will be some public monies, possibly some grant money involved if possible. But the long-term maintenance, all those efforts and costs have not been all determined yet.
That answers all my questions right now. Thank you.
One other item, Bud, and I don't know if Mr. Nash is aware, but I know Taylor Cadillac or Kia is on board there. I don't know the exact arrangements that the chamber's made, but right now I believe it's a chamber-led project, but apparently ODOT wants us to at least acknowledge that this effort's underway. Is that right, Mr. Nash?
That is correct, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the fire department, item number 9. Chief?
Yes, sir. Next on it is Resolution 21-066, authorization to donate equipment to Richfield Township Fire Department. Currently, I have 2 out-of-service Echo quick vent saws that we no longer use Echo type. We use steel. They were sitting around in case we needed to use for parts. However, we have no operating Echo quick vent saws now. And Richfield is in a dire need of some parts for their Echo quick vent saw, and they are unable to get them. So what I would like to do is donate 2 of ours that do not work, so that Richfield can use them for parts to hopefully get their one saw that they have up and running.
Okay, if there's no questions for the chief, I'll move resolution 21-066 to authorize the donation of equipment to Richfield Township Fire Department.
Second.
I will call the roll. Mr. Genowine,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall.
Yes, and Chief, thanks a lot. I appreciate you following up on this and helping a sister fire department here. Next item on the agenda is item number 10, Police Department. Chief?
Yeah, this is resolution number 21-073. This just authorizes us to certify our police officer eligibility list. We've given the NTN test, and this will encompass all the applicants that passed the written test and are now, we'll be taking a look at to see who we're going to hire and move through the process. Eventually this year, we'll have 3 openings. We have 1 current vacancy. We should have 2 more retirements. So this will be to help establish a list to replace 3 positions.
Are any of these positions new, Chief? I don't think they are, correct?
No, there'll be nothing new, no additions, just to replace retiring officers. That's all.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, I'll move resolution 21-073 to establish an eligibility list to hire police officers.
Second.
Calling the roll, Mr. Genowine,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is item number 11. It's resolution 21-074, adopting an amendment to offer of employment for our administrator. And I can let the public know that the administrator was reviewed back in February, and his overall review, I think his overall was pretty good, but on overall items, 3 of the 4 elected officials evaluated Mr. Turner. And on 10 general items, the scale was 1 to 5, and he averaged on a consensus 4.7. The other thing we've done with Mr. Turner is set up goals each year, in addition to the overall consensus ranking. And on the goals, there were 21 last year, and he really did well on those. This year, there's 25. Overall, the goals have 3 levels. Some goals are where we expect Mr. Turner to take the lead. Others are support roles, where Mr. Turner is supporting somebody else that is technically have the lead. And then there's some goals where he oversees the operations of the township. He did very well on those rankings. And the next thing is the overall comments on the evaluation. He's strong on a number of areas. I won't list them all, but certainly his reporting and communications, the JED efforts with the city, and really resisting annexation, and at the same time trying to make efforts to resolve the issue turned out well. Support on the fire levy and so forth. Under goals, really he's doing a good job there. The evaluation shows that all are underway with a great start, and the board is asking to emphasize communications, economic development efforts, improve the township image in the community, and bring the departments together as one township team. Next, there was a question on the form was what can the board do to assist the administrator, and that we can certainly be a sounding board for him, as we've been doing, and help on items, especially in the areas of economic development, succession planning, and community comparisons. Our first comparison we'd like to make, and the board will be helping Mr. Turner with it, is a Sylvania Township, Perrysburg City and Township comparison. This is something that I know Mr. Mahoney has been trying to get started for some time. And finally, the goals for next year. He had 21 goals last year, and this year he has 25. Some of the goals are overlapping. We know that they'll take more than 1 year. I think his evaluation is pretty good, and if you have any questions, I'll certainly try to answer those. Mr. Mahoney?
I do not, thank you.
Mr. Genuine?
No.
Mr. Simcoe?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I will move resolution 21074 to adopting an amendment to the offer of employment for the administrator, Oliver Turner.
Second.
I'll call the roll. Mr. Genuine?
No.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is the fiscal officer, and I'll ask Dave to quickly summarize these items. I'm trying to get ready for the 5:30 meeting, Dave, but I'd also like you to mention that the state auditor was in and we met with him. Go ahead,
Yes.
Dave.
Yes, we do have these several 4 resolutions, and I won't go over them all. You all had received a memo on them. And so if there are any questions, I or Oliver or Emron can try to answer them. But otherwise, I would request approval of the 4 resolutions, and then I'll comment on the auditor meeting after that.
Okay, I'll take them one at a time in case there's questions. Resolution 21071, transfer of funds. I will move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Genuine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall.
Yes. Next item on the agenda, if there's no questions, is Resolution 21072, advance of funds.
Second.
I will,
Okay, and Mr. Genowine?
So I'm looking at the 4 items listed, and again, I apologize if I'm kind of out of tune here. But is this for the $219,000 contract? Oh, that's for the roads. Okay, I'm sorry, my eyes were a little bad there. Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
yes. Next item is Resolution 21070, Township appropriation from the unencumbered balance. I will move approval if there's no questions.
Second.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes. Last item under the fiscal officer is Resolution 21075, approved payment of then and now purchase certificate. If there's no questions, I'll move approval.
Second.
Call the roll. Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes. Dave, would you then update the board on the meeting with the auditor quickly?
Yeah. We did meet with Auditor Farber and his local assistant, Lori Brody. And Lori is a former, I think, a president of the council out in Maumee, and she has a job now with the auditor. But the auditor goes around and tries to meet with townships and just introduce himself and introduce his contact person, which is Lori. And prior to us, I had met with Springfield Township. It was a very nice meeting with him. It was nice to see him in person, and also Lori. And that we also have a very nice relationship with Chris White, who is kind of the director. I'm not sure of his title of the auditing and that, but Farber had said that contact Lori if we have any questions, which we're doing fine. And then he also was kind of nice. He gave us his personal cell phone number. If we have any questions or concerns or comments, we're to call him directly. And I thought that was somewhat unusual and positive for a guy who's, working all around the state and that, but would take our cell phone calls to him directly to him. And but it was a nice meeting, and then I enjoyed meeting him. And that he's actually out of Salina, so he's kind of not too far from us. And but in any event, it was a very good meeting, very positive. As he's going around the state, he spent some time with us here, and that was nice. That's all I have, unless someone has a question.
Thank you, Dave. Next item on the agenda is hearing of the public for non-agenda items. If you'd wish to speak, please give us your name and address.
I'm sorry.
Next
What
item.
was the next item for
Oh,
agenda?
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry. My dog had just barked and I didn't hear what you had said as far as the next item
This
for
is
agenda.
for items that, ma'am, this is for items of the public that are non-agenda items. If you have any issues that is not on the agenda, this is the time to give us your name and address.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Hearing nothing, I'll move on to item number 14, open discussion and report. The first one is a review request for a liquor permit at 5644 Whiteford Road. That's the Family Dollar store there. And I'm assuming, Mr. Turner, that it's been run by the police and fire department, no issues?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there were no issues raised. There was actually, as the trustees remember at the last meeting, there was also another notification for 5644 Whiteford. That was for a C1 permit. This pertains to C2 permit notification. The notifications were sent by liquor control several days apart. So that's why they're on 2 separate meeting agendas.
Okay, thank you. And we don't need to take any action there. Next thing, Mr. Turner, would you update quickly the board on the liquor control letter? And I'm sure you're running it by the police and fire departments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the township received notification from Division of Liquor Control that all permits to sell alcoholic beverages within the township expires on July 1st, and that every permit holder must file a renewal application. The Ohio Revised Code does provide the township trustees the authority with the right to object to the renewal of the permit and to request a hearing. And that's correct. It was run past the fire and police departments, and there were no establishments that were identified, as a source of objection.
Okay, thank you. Anything else to report, Mr. Mahoney?
I do not.
Mr. Genuine?
No.
Mr. Simcoe?
No.
All right. The only thing I have is I did send a letter out supporting the TARDA statement. I think the elected officials saw the draft, and I understand from Mr. Turner there were no comments. So I did sign and send that letter out. Next, I think, is a motion to adjourn, correct? And then we'll open up the hearing.
Don't we just keep the open? Don't we just keep it open?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, let's just go back
I guess
to
we can.
zoning.
Okay, we'll go back to the zoning then. Thank you. I wasn't sure how you wanted to handle that. Okay, and we'll be going back to the zoning issue. We're running a little bit late here, but we'll open up for a public hearing at 5:42. Would you give us a little background on this, Mr. Ross?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this is a zone change request for the property at 5654 Roberts Road. It's an approximate 0.4 acre lot in the Fruitland Farm subdivision just north of Alexis. The majority of the parcel is zone C2 general commercial. A single family dwelling was on the property until February of this year when it was destroyed by fire. And the applicant wishes to rebuild the single family dwelling. However, the C2 commercial zoning does not permit a single family dwelling on that parcel. Thus, they're requesting the zone change to RA suburban residential. The abutting uses to the north and the west of the subject property are all residential, and they're a mix of C2 and RA zoning. To the east is automotive collision business within the city of Sylvania, and then there's commercial to the south, a gas station on Alexis Road. And the request is compatible with the Sylvania Township Land Use Plan, and the Lucas County Plan Commission and the Township Zoning Commission both unanimously recommended approval of the zone change request. And the applicant is here this evening as well. And just on a personal note, I'd like to thank the applicant, Teresa Laney, for her kind words in the Sylvania Advantage about Marie and our zoning office. That was very nice of you, Ms. Laney.
I appreciate
Does the applicant, oh, I'm sorry. Does the applicant wish to have any comments for the board?
not at this time, other than we really appreciate all of the love and support that we've had since February 3rd. The neighbors have been really wonderful. We just want to get home. Thank you.
Yes, we certainly, you certainly had a tragic situation there. If there's no other questions, I'll move resolution 2165 to approve a zone change from C2 to RA so that these people can rebuild at 54 Roberts Road.
Second.
I'll call the roll. Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes, thank you. Next item on the agenda is resolution 21064. Oh, no, I should close the hearing. I'm sorry.
Mr.
I'll
Crandall?
close the hearing. Yes,
It's Chief Ram. I also want to give kudos to Miss Laney. She's been very generous to the fire department, and that was a very tragic day for everyone around. And I'm glad that you guys voted yes to allow her to rebuild there. So thank you from the fire department.
yes, I actually talked to one of the neighbors, and they certainly are anxious to see these people be able to rebuild there. Thank you, Chief. I will close the
Thank you,
public
Chief.
hearing,
Thank
the move to close the public hearing at 5:46.
Second.
Okay, oh, all right, I'll call the roll. Mr. Genowine,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall.
Yes. Now we'll go back to the resolution 21064, which is authorization, of abatement of debris.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Gross?
Yes, I'd sent an email to the board regarding the unique circumstances surrounding this property, and that the road department is willing to remove the brush pile in front of the house at 5952 Riga Drive, but they would prefer that it comes from the board authorizing that removal.
Any questions on this item? Mr. Mahoney?
I do not. Thank you.
Mr. Genuine?
No.
Mr. Simcoe?
No, I don't. Is there a second to the motion?
Well,
second
I
it.
don't think I haven't made. the
Or yeah,
motion
he didn't
yet.
offer it yet.
Oh, I see.
I didn't offer it.
Well,
I
I do
have
have-
one concern. I went out and viewed the area, and while I know it's great that we're going to go out and do this, there's actually on that same street another brush pile. And I'm worried that we go in and we take care of one pile and not the other. I do understand your concerns, Mr. Gross, about getting this done. But we get calls every year that somebody doesn't get the brush out in time, and then we're not able to have the staff to double back and do that. And I'm wondering if we should have some type of charge to go back and clean any brush when people request it. Kind of like our lift fee, I feel like if we just go out and start picking up brush after the men have went around and done the work, I'm afraid this is going to open up a can of worms. I hope not. But I'm wondering if we should have a charge, a nominal charge. I'm not thinking of charging the full amount, but have a nominal charge so that we would keep these requests in check.
I have some familiarity with the other brush pile on the street, and I know with the snowfall we had 2 weeks ago, I think a lot of trees and limbs came down, and I think a lot of people assumed that we were coming back through. So I think a lot of times it's just a simple notice that they're not. Rob, after that snowfall that brought down so many limbs and things, we weren't going back through the neighborhoods at that point? Is Rob still on here? Maybe he checked out. Oh, I
Mr.
think he
Jen,
did.
I don't see Rob on. Mhm.
No, you're right.
Could you follow up on that, Mr. Turner, and could we put this on the next agenda? I
Yes,
feel pretty
certainly.
strongly that this could open up a real can of worms for us. And I do understand the gentleman that cleaned up this property and would like to tear it down. I understand all that. I went by the property. It's in pretty poor condition. But I'm worried that other people on that same street are going to say, well, why didn't you pick us up? And then the next street might say, why didn't you pick us up? And I think a nominal charge might be something.
Particularly since we turned the guy down on Bancroft when he did the same thing, if you recall that situation.
We didn't
It
turn
was
it down.
a little bit different.
We didn't
Pardon?
start it. sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I thought I don't think we picked up his stuff after he cleaned up that acre or whatever. I'm again.
No, we
it was
did.
my
'Cause- yeah, we did because there was a bunch of big logs that we probably shouldn't have picked up, but we ended up picking up.
Okay, it was my understanding that we didn't. So I
Well,
apologize.
what do you feel about having a crew charge of 1 hour or something for these type of requests, to try to keep it in check? We just don't have the staff to keep going back and getting brush picked up when we should be doing other work at this time of the year, in my opinion. What do you think about that, Mr. Genuine?
Could we ask Rob for his opinion? Because obviously my opinion's not gonna. I mean, he's the one that manages the department. He manages the workflow.
Sure,
Certainly, whatever
Sure.
recommendation should come from him.
that's fine.
Just-
Do you agree
I
with
may-
that, Mr. Mahoney?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, then let's ask Mr. Turner to check that out and get back to us. And we'll, if it's all right, Mr. Gross, do you think we can put this off to the next meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I don't think there's any great hurry for it. I do believe that's why Mr. Nash wanted the resolution from the trustees, though, was just sort of because there could be some concerns from the neighbors on that street of why this property got a second wave and nobody else did. But yeah, we could certainly put it on the, I guess it would be the May 18th agenda.
Yes. Would you let the property owner know that? We'll take that up. And Mr. Turner, will you have a recommendation back to us from you and Mr. Nash?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And on a note, I received a text message from Rob Nash. Sounds like there are some connectivity issues. He said that he can hear the board, but he got removed from the meeting or kicked off inadvertently. He said that he didn't feel that there were enough complaints or calls to warrant taking it to the board to authorize a second pickup. But as requested at the board's pleasure, I'm certainly glad to follow up with Rob and bring this back.
Oliver, did we
Okay,
get many
Eric.
requests after that snowfall? Or, I mean, when I drove through the community, it sure seemed like there was a lot of trees down. And again, I didn't follow up and ask Rob, what their schedule was, but it certainly, that 5 inches of snow with the leaves on the trees brought down a lot of limbs and actual trees itself. So I was just curious.
Yeah, there were a number of requests. I think Rob could probably speak to the volume better than I could because he fields most of the concerns. But I do know that there were some after that storm. I know they went out and picked up several within the right of way.
That's maybe something, if you could do it, Mr. Turner, is discuss it. I know sometimes we do go out after a storm and sometimes we don't. I don't really know. I think that's the road superintendent's decision, but maybe you could add that to your recommendation when you come back. Because I think Mr. Genuine's right. Sometimes we do make an extra pass and other times we do not. And I think that's another communication thing with the public, to be sure to let them know what our intent is.
Mr. Crandall, I have a comment on this, and I think that the city of Sylvania makes more passes than we do on these things. And sometimes people, for whatever reason, like John mentions, a snowstorm or whatever, and that. And I think we should take a spin, through the township and pick up things like after we close or make another loop around. I mean, I see some things on Flanders Road right now, and what kind of bugs me is that this stuff sits out there until the fall, and I think if we're not going to do it, I think we should. That's my feeling. We should, but if we don't, then I think that the zoning department should go out and cite these people for a nuisance or something. Who wants to look at a pile of sticks and big brush and things like that and it sits there until, September when we're picking this stuff up. And I think it's wrong. So either we make another pass and there's not that much out there, but we make another pass, or if we don't, then the zoning department has to get out and cite these people for a mess, because who wants to look at this stuff out there? I think people in the township expect, either the township residents at my house, I have a brush pile, and I don't take stuff. I'm trimming all the time. I've got almost 2 acres, trimming all the time, putting this stuff. And if I just heaped it out there at the street and waiting until the fall for someone to come and get it, no, I set it back on my property so no one sees it. And then I put it in a wheelbarrow out in the spring like this, and I haul it out there. But some of these people just decide to throw it out there at the street, and I just don't think that that's right. So either we have to take a pass by and then cite people, or we start citing people if they missed a deadline. Okay, cite them and tell them to get that stuff out of there, so we don't have this mess.
Dave, I think we
we have-
conditioned our residents that anytime a stick falls in their yard, they take it out to the curb, no matter what time of year it is and things. And it is frustrating for a lot of the other residents. So, I think number one, establishing the policy is the first step, and then getting the word out in terms of, what our policy is and what type of enforcement that we'll have for it. So I agree 100% with you, Dave.
I think, Mr. Genuine, we can add that, Mr. Simcoe, to the recommendation coming back from Mr. Turner and Mr. Nash. But I think we have to also realize that he's had the biggest layoff in that department. Plus, right now, I'm sure he's doing curb work and things and ramps for next year's resurfacing. And we want to be sure that he does those projects ahead so we can do the resurfacing next year. I'd like to know he thinks he can handle this. That's why I'm thinking maybe there should be a nominal charge. But whatever, Mr. Turner, I think there's consensus that whatever Mr. Nash and Mr. Turner come up with, the board will consider that at the next meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's fine.
Good. Okay, I'll move adjournment then at 5:58.
Second.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the roll of Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mr. Genuine,
Yes.
Mr. Crandall.
Yes, and I'd like to thank everyone for keeping moving on the agenda and getting us through this agenda. I think we did it in pretty good time. Thank you, and good evening.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, good night, all. Thanks.